Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Goldie Show. I'm your host, Goldie Gamari. And what we do on The Goldie Show is we talk a little bit about the news of the day, but then we also do more of a deep dive into documentaries or videos regarding Islamic terrorism, jihad, various issues relating to that. Of course, I want to give a shout out to all of my channel members. Thank you for your support, the channel subscribers, and of course, all of our wonderful mods. Thank you for being here. And I wanted to start off by giving my condolences to the Jewish community for the horrific terrorist attack that happened at Bondi Beach. Now, I did pronounce it Bondi Beach in my video where I spoke about it, but I was corrected. I was told by Australians it's pronounced Bondi Beach, so I'll keep that in mind. But yeah, I want to give my condolences to the Jewish community. And if you watched my short video that I posted last night, I said that probably for me, what makes this Islamic terrorist attack even more horrific is that it could have been prevented. It was entirely preventable. And part of the reason that we're seeing this growing violence against Jewish people worldwide is because for some reason, Western politicians are turning a blind eye to Islamic terrorism. They're turning a blind eye to jihad. And they are allowing these Islamic savages to take over streets in the West and allow them to push their Islamofascist jihadi ideology under the guise of multiculturalism and diversity and freedom of expression and freedom of religion and all of these freedoms, by the way, that don't exist in Middle Eastern countries, right? Like the same people, these jihadis who are in Western countries waving the flags of Palestine and like other terrorist organizations, They're not allowed to do this in countries like Egypt or UAE, or even Saudi Arabia, right? And Saudi Arabia isn't exactly like the bastion of human rights either. But at the very least, at least those Middle Eastern countries and many others recognize and understand what jihad is and how jihad, when it's unchecked, can lead to the destabilization of their societies. And so this behavior is banned in the Middle East. And yet, in European countries, it goes completely unchecked. And so over this past weekend, not only did we hear about this horrific mass shooting Islamic terrorist attack in Australia, we also got news that Paris is canceling their New Year's Eve celebrations because they are worried about the threat of migrant violence. Of course, by migrant, they mean Muslims. And literally just before I started this live stream, it just came up on my newsfeed that apparently the FBI now foiled a credible terror plot that was planned for New Year's Eve in the United States. So, yeah, I just wanted to start off by watching this video. I haven't seen it yet. So it's like 1 minute long, and I figured, might as well watch it together, because guys, I mean, we don't have to live like this, okay? We don't have to live in constant fear of Islamic terrorism. And why is it that, 15, 20, 30 years ago, we didn't really worry too much about Islamic terrorist attacks, and yet now all of a sudden we do? What has changed, guys? What has changed? Let me tell you something. Mass immigration, demographics, that's what's changed. All of these Western politicians have imported savages from third world countries, right? People whose ideologies are fundamentally incompatible with Western civilization. Politicians have let them into the countries, and this is how they're repaying everyone. All right, let's watch this and see what's going on here.
Breaking news, 10 minutes past the hour. This news happening out of Los Angeles. The FBI now reports that it's disrupted a planned New Year's Eve terror attack in Los Angeles. 4 suspects in custody, the FBI identifying them as members of a pro-Palestine extremist group. They're suspected of planning coordinated IED attacks targeting 5 different locations in Los Angeles. But based on the reporting now, that plot has been foiled. We will wait for more out of LA or out of Washington, D.C. for what the FBI has to say about that developing story. And
yeah, one of the things that crossed my mind as all of these stories were developing is say a prayer for the first responders, right? The ones who are first on the scene, who have to see some of these horrific things that are hard to unsee, and they help protect people and comfort people by getting the information out there to them as quickly as possible.
They are under a lot of pressure, too, when you hear stories like this. Breaking news, 10 minutes past.
So there you have it. A pro-Palestine group in the United States was planning on executing a mass terrorist attack. Thank God it was foiled by the FBI. But yeah, this is now become an almost daily occurrence, and I'll have a lot more to say about this in my short videos. But yeah, this is just my little daily rant here right now before we actually begin the documentary. Major actual. The reason politicians allow the infiltration and attacks is because that gives them all the excuse they need to pass pet laws to play with the population at their will. Look back through history. You make a very good point, Major. I was following up with what the Australian Prime Minister had to say about the terrorist attack, and it was insane. I mean, he basically spoke about far right extremism, and then I think he also spoke about the need to strengthen gun laws, right? Like just the most messed up things, because I don't think that guns kill people. I think terrorists kill people. it's so ridiculous, there. But no, you're absolutely right about that, and thank you for the comment and for your support. Always appreciate you. Always appreciate your thoughts and feedback on the show. Okay, I also have this video. Mark Levin just posted this about 5 hours ago. And the title of the video is called "What Will It Take to Awaken Us?" So I want to watch this as well. And then we are going to get into the documentary of the day, which is Robert Spencer talking about the theological aspects of Islam that lead to jihad. And given the um, very, very rapidly increasing incidence of jihad that we are seeing in the West, I find it interesting that a lot of people are like, where did this come from? We have no idea what's going on. Why is this happening? How is this happening? You know, those of us who are from the Middle East, we know exactly what's going on and why it's happening. But I'm hoping that at least this documentary will give some of you a better understanding of the logic and reasoning that goes behind Islamic Jihad. So, all right, let's start with this video by Mark Levin, because I want to watch this before we get to the main documentary.
The shooting at Brown, 2 dead students, others wounded. Terrible, terrible, terrible. And our soldiers murdered in Syria. I mean, this is serious stuff. And I know our president will deal with what took place in Syria. We're going to have to figure out how to deal with these colleges and universities. I'm not sure, but that we do need to figure out. And also this slaughter that took place in Australia. You know, ladies and gentlemen, people have written books. Hitler's American Friends. They've written books, The Abandonment of the Jews, World War II, Beyond Belief, Hitler, World War II, Buried by the New York Times, World War II, Stalin's Apologists in America, including the New York Times and so forth. People say history repeats itself. Is that going to happen now? I fear it damn well might. You have 2 men slaughtering Jews on Hanukkah. Tonight's the first night of Hanukkah. You know what it reminded me of when I watched Schindler's List? And that colonel goes on the balcony with a rifle. And there are Jews in the field, and they're working at the camp. He takes his rifle, and he starts picking them off one by one as if he's shooting at deer or hogs or something like that. We have a United Nations that is nothing but a cesspool of Jew hatred. The vast majority of European governments, left-wing governments, are appeasers of Islamists. You have communist regimes such as China that arm our enemies and arm the enemies of Israel, stoking anti-Semitism in our own country. You have fascist regimes that are doing exactly the same thing, monarchies in the Middle East. We have a Western press that is essentially a voice for Marxists and sympathetic toward Islamism, spreading blood libels, accusing Israel of committing genocide, knowing they're using false information, that Israel's creating famines, executing innocent civilians, blowing up hospitals, schools, and mosques. Now, everybody knows exactly what's going on. Israel is not going in and doing these things. Israel is defending itself for the zillionth time against enemies that surround her, trying to obliterate her and destroy all of its people. The Marxist paradigm of Israel, the oppressor, and its enemies, the oppressed. A lie that Israel is occupying lands that are, in fact, the ancient indigenous lands of the Jewish people. Do you have a Bible on your night table? If you read it, it'll tell you right there, as will the rest of history. China, Russia, Iran, that access, funding, and supporting the terrorist regime.
I mean, by Iran, of course, he means the Islamic Republic occupying Iran, because I'm Iranian and that is the flag of Iran up there. And Iran was actually an ally of the United States prior to 1979. It was only when the Islamists came and took over the country and turned it into a 7th century Islamic hellhole governed by Sharia law that Iran all of a sudden became the bad guy. Iran was never the bad guy. It's the ideology, it's the Islamic Republic, and their never ending jihad, which they are now exporting around the world. And there are some people who are saying that the Islamic Republic occupying Iran is somehow linked to the mass shooting Islamic terror attack at Bondi Beach in Australia. I'm still waiting to get more confirmation on this before I make a video about it. But guys, to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if the Islamic Republic was behind this. I mean, they are the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. All right, so I just wanted to point that out. When he says Iran, he means the Islamic Republic occupying Iran.
And groups secreting themselves into the internet, social media like TikTok, Qatar, the greatest funder and supporter of terrorism and anti-Semitic propaganda on the planet, funding Western colleges and universities, our colleges and universities, with tens of billions of dollars, targeting our K through 12 students, buying off corporate CEOs, buying off politicians and law firms, media podcasters, NGOs, the entertainment industry, sports leagues and platforms with hundreds of billions of dollars. Lenin never said this, but he is said to have said that we will hang the West and the capitalists, we will sell them the rope by which they do it. That's what they're doing. While presenting one face to the West, the Qataris present another face to their jihadi allies in Iran, in Turkey, the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, giving Hamas terror bosses protection, Islamic Jihad, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, all the rest, funding Al Jazeera, which spreads poison about Israel to hundreds of millions of Muslims and others, including in our country. Communist China, the second biggest funder of anti-Semitism around the world, has footholds in our colleges and universities with their Confucius Institutes, also spending tens of billions of dollars to brainwash our youth. Left-wing movements and political parties all throughout the West have joined with the Islamists, what I've been calling and writing about for a long time now, that is the fusion between the Marxists and the Islamists with the goal of destroying Western society.
For those of you who have been watching, my live streams for a while, and you've joined, and you've joined me for my watch party documentaries about the history of the 1979 Islamic Revolution, you guys are already aware of the dangerous alliance. We call it the unholy alliance between the red and the black. Red being Marxism, black being Islamism. And it was that unholy alliance that destabilized Iran and basically made it so that the Islamists could then take over. And so that unholy alliance of the red and the black, communists, Marxists, and Islamists, they are united in only one sense, and that is their anti-imperialist ideology, right? So they're united in their desire to topple and destabilize Western civilization, Western countries. The communists, of course, want to turn the countries over to communism, and the Islamists, of course, want to implement Sharia law. So what he's talking about right now, this is really important because this is exactly what happened to Iran in 1979. And it's not something that happened overnight, guys. The efforts from the communists and the Islamists began in the 1940s. So it took them almost 40 years to reach a critical point where they had enough strength and enough support to topple the country, basically, and take control. And studies show that only somewhere between 6% to 10% of Iranians were involved in overthrowing the Shah. And I say Iranians in air quotes because at least half of them weren't even Iranian. They were either KGB agents, or they were Iraqis from Najaf, or Palestinians like Yasser Arafat sent a whole bunch of them over. There were some Pakistanis mixed in there, some Muslims from Lebanon, which then eventually became Hezbollah, right? So this was a foreign takeover, foreign occupation, right? The unity of the red and the black. That's what we're talking about here, and so that's what Mark Levin is now talking about, and it is incredibly relevant because we've seen this story before. We've seen how it plays out. Learning Language, thank you so much for gifting a membership and for the support. Really appreciate that. Hope you're enjoying the live stream. Ram Bam 3000. Hello, Goldie from England. Hello. Hope you are doing well. Thank you for joining the live stream. Hope you enjoy.
Judeo-Christian value system and our belief system.
I'm going to go back a little bit now that I gave an explanation here. So now you know what he's talking about when he's talking about the Red and the Black Alliance.
Billions of dollars to brainwash our youth. Left-wing movements and political parties all throughout the West have joined with the Islamists, what I've been calling and writing about for a long time now, that is the fusion between the Marxists and the Islamists, with the goal of destroying Western society, the Judeo-Christian value system, and our belief system that undergirds our nation, first by destroying the Judeo part, then by destroying the Christian part. Europe's left-wing parties, so-called Labour and Liberal parties, kowtow to the Islamists, as does our left-wing party, the Democrat Party. But it's worse. In addition to the Marxist Islamist radicals, we have a neo-fascist force in our country and in other countries that has sprung up that preaches the same Jew hatred, Christian hatred, American hatred, and Western hatred as the Marxist Islamists. They all share the same viewpoint. And together what they seek is the deconstruction of Western society. Our culture, the Western culture, is being destroyed. The civil society, tolerance, moderation, rational discourse, the competition of ideas are being smothered. The Marxists attack our founding principles, our Constitution, our economic system, our free will, our liberty, our property rights, and everything necessary for a civil society to thrive, as they promise a utopia, a workers' paradise, free health care, housing, food, education. How many people have to die by Marxist promises? Stalin's 1936 Constitution was absolutely beautiful. It meant nothing. Nothing. The Islamists claim compliance with their fundamentalism, whether you be Jewish, Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, or atheist. Even Muslims who reject fundamentalism and who've been slaughtered because they oppose these Islamists, slaughtered by the hundreds of thousands, by killers who claim the same faith. Jews are slaughtered in Israel and around the world, slaughtered in Australia. Christians are slaughtered in Africa and around the world. Muslims are slaughtered in Africa, in parts of the Middle East. And most of the West is weak, politically incorrect. Look around. There are a few voices, not enough. Not enough. So what's going on? Appeasing with phony agreements an enemy from within, and worse, embracing the fundamentalists and promoting them in hopes of buying some kind of peace. The ruling class in the West is weak and incompetent. In fact, despite the public and open writings and speeches of Islamist leaders, encouraging revolution by immigration, that is, conquering the West through mass migration and using the freedom and laws of the West against the freedom of laws in the West, using the political system and media against the political system and free speech. The Western countries, our country in the past, eliminates immigration barriers and actually contorts the rules to ensure that virtually anyone who wishes to migrate to the United States before Trump or a Western country is free to do so. No longer is immigration based on what's best for the existing citizenry. No. That's racist. That's bigotry. As I've explained for years, there is no assimilation. There's no assimilation into Western society, into our country. Values, beliefs, norms, and traditions of our country. Immigration has become tribal. Tribal. The West, we are told, must accommodate other cultures. Oh, yes. By tolerating, if not accepting, their cultures. But the jihadist Islamist culture and our culture are utterly incompatible.
I 100% agree with this. Not all cultures are compatible with Western civilization, and that like Islamic jihadi ideology, completely incompatible.
Completely. We embrace the Judeo-Christian value and belief system and the Enlightenment. They embrace none of it. It's interesting that Indonesia, the largest Muslim country on the face of the earth, with 250 million Muslims, that's not a terrorist state. Terrorist groups are not headquartered there. They don't put up with it. Yet Qatar, with 330,000 citizens, is the hub of it all, with the regimes in Iran and Turkey, among other places.
I'm glad that he at least said the regime in Iran, right? Because Iran is occupied by an Islamic dictatorship. So thankfully, at least he said that this time.
Again, the reason is simple. Indonesia actively and successfully counters terrorism and is a stable, democratic nation that does not use terrorism as a tool of the state or for its policy. In fact, it is a key international partner in counterterrorism efforts. For the Democrat Party, immigration is about power. It's that simple. It's about adding congressional districts, the Electoral College, birthright citizenship, chain migration. The party comes before the country. They will fight to the bitter end to ensure that illegal aliens remain in our country no matter the cost. They will never do what must be done to stem the flow of immigration and its impact. Never. Australia is very similar. So are most of the liberal Western countries. The left-wing parties in England, France, Canada, Australia, they're of the same mindset, politically and otherwise. The left-wing government in Australia has been warned over and over again that it is fueling Jew hatred, that its statements and policies toward Israel are encouraging terrorism against Jews, that its support for a Palestinian state when the Palestinians are fighting a war against Israel. Like most of these Western countries, as a matter of fact, is sending exactly the wrong message to terrorists, and that most of the Australian media, like our media and Europe's media, kept promoting these blood libels against the Jews and the nation of Israel. The lies about October 7 and the subsequent war, pushed by Qatar, Hamas, Iran, Russia, China, and a huge network of well-funded NGOs and other media outlets, podcasters, were leading to threats, intimidation, and violence by large mobs against Jews. We've seen it on TV. We've seen it in our own communities. There's not another minority group in which this takes place relentlessly and repeatedly, like one crystal knock after another after another. And now this massacre of Jews on Hanukkah, the first night of Hanukkah, picked off with high-powered rifles. You would think that the West would be much on alert about this. Much on alert about this. Just 2 years and 2 months after Jews were slaughtered and butchered and raped and kidnapped on October 7th, death by torture, starvation, execution for the hostages, all filmed and celebrated. The dehumanization, the inhumanity, the unspeakable. You would think that the West would have learned a lesson. No. The slaughter of black Christians by black Muslims in Africa would nary a word. The slaughter of Uyghur Muslims by communist China, Muslims in Syria and Yemen, slaughtered by the hundreds of thousands by the Islamists. The world mostly sleeps. Or worse, appeases. What will it take to awaken us, our politicians, our so-called leaders? This is a battle between civilization and barbarism. Unfortunately, history tells us that the West will eventually awaken, but too late. That is not until so much horror has been inflicted on humanity by this evil. I am deeply troubled by the lack of outrage in our country by leaders in every walk of life against these dark forces that are among us. In our own country, these political movements, politicians, business leaders, union leaders, academics, so cowardly they won't speak out forcefully and repeatedly against the poison that we all hear, that we all see. This evil has become, in our country, ubiquitous. Apart from a relative few, I must ask, where are they? Why do they cower? Why are they silent? Our generation has the benefit of knowing what took place in the 1930s. We know what took place in China, Mao's China. We know what took place in Stalin's Russia. We are witnesses to 9/11 and other terrorist attacks against our people. We saw what happened to the Israelis on October 7th. Why do so-called leaders refuse to speak out and condemn those who spread Jew hatred in our country today, right now, when it is all around us? The so-called influencers, podcasters, student groups, certain imams, commentators, hosts, they trash evangelical Christians too, who identify as Christian Zionists. They are righteous Gentiles, but they are attacked. Why are these people silent when they deny the Holocaust, sympathize with the Third Reich, and demonize the greatest generation? Look at the murders of these 2 young people in Washington who work for the Israeli embassy, or the setting on fire of Jews in Colorado, or the slaughter of Jews at a synagogue in Pittsburgh, or the chasing of Jews on college campuses. That's not America. And it spreads to other groups and to other people. We are Americans. We must stand for Americanism, for our principles, for our values, for our beliefs, for our history, for our future. We must protect ourselves, our children and future generations. We must protect them from the enemy outside and the enemy within. If our leaders, whether in politics or culture, cannot, then we must replace them. Shame on the Prime Minister of Australia, who was warned time and again. Shame on the other prime ministers and presidents, or whatever they are, in these other countries. They learned nothing from what went on 80 short years ago. How do they think this is going to end if they don't stand up and fight it? And I am proud to say we have a president of the United States who is standing up and fighting it. He's fighting it in the culture, he's fighting it in politics, he's fighting it in the border. He's fighting it. We only had more Donald Trumps in these countries. A lot of people died today. We pray for them and all their families. But we must be resolute, we must be strong, and we must demand that the ruling class do more.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe.
Okay. Oh, my connection. Okay. My connection glitched for a moment, but hopefully I am back. So that was what Mark Levin was putting out today. So let's now go to today's documentary. So it's a speech by Robert Spencer. Now, who is Robert Spencer? He's the director of Jihad Watch and a Shillman Fellow at the David Horowitz Freedom Center. He's the author of 32 books, including the New York Times bestsellers The Politically Incorrect Guide to Islam in the Crusades and The Truth About Muhammad, and the bestsellers The History of Jihad from Muhammad to ISIS and The Critical Quran. His newest books are Intifada on the Hudson, The Selling of Zohran Mamdani, and Holy Hell, Islam's Abuse of Women and the Infidels Who Enable It. Coming in April 2026 is The Tragedy of Islam, Failure, and Excuses. Spencer has led seminars on Islam and jihad for the FBI, the United States Central Command, the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College, the U.S. Army's Asymmetric Warfare Group, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, the Justice Department's Anti-Terrorism Advisory Council, and the U.S. Intelligence Committee. He has discussed jihad, Islam, and terrorism at a workshop sponsored by the U.S. State Department and the German Foreign Ministry. He is a senior fellow with the Center for Security Policy and the Institute for the American Future. The talk that I'm going to be sharing by him today, it's from 15 years ago. This was posted on November 23, 2015, and it's called The Theological Aspects of Islam That Lead to Jihad. And so I figured this would be very good documentary to watch today. I haven't seen it myself, but I'm certainly looking forward to it. And the reason that I picked this particular documentary is because this past weekend we have seen one incident of jihad after another. With, of course, the most horrific one being the mass shooting by Islamic terrorists at Bondi Beach in Australia. Of course, in France, you're seeing Paris having to shut down Christmas and New Year's events due to fears of violence from Muslim migrants. We've seen targeted killings of Americans in Syria by Islamic terrorists in Syria. And of course, just before I went live on this podcast, I got news that the FBI just foiled a terror plot that was planned for New Year's Eve by an extreme pro-Palestine group. So I think it's pretty pertinent, and this will hopefully give all of you a little bit more understanding into what jihad is and why the top 100 terrorist groups in the world are all Islamic terrorist groups.
Thank you very much. As Dr. Weicker said, I am here to speak about the theological foundations of jihad. And this is, of course, a very important point to start with because it's one of the most controverted. One of the things that you will very frequently hear the President of the United States say is that the Islamic State, or ISIS, a group that self-consciously refers to itself as Islamic and tries to make recruits among Muslims on the basis of its Islamic authenticity, actually has nothing to do with Islam. And it's not.
I also want to point out that the Pakistani Muslim terrorist who was mass murdering Jewish people in Australia, he was known to authorities. They knew that he had links to ISIS, the Islamic State. The authorities knew that, and yet they did nothing about it because they didn't think that he was a legitimate threat. So just want to point that out. If you think all these Islamic terrorist groups only operate in the Middle East, nope, they have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of sleeper cells all across Western and European countries.
Just Obama who says this, but the Secretary of State, the Vice President,
I'm going to go back and start from the beginning.
Thank you very much. As Dr. Weicker said, I am here to speak about the theological foundations of jihad. And this is, of course, a very important point to start with because it's one of the most controverted. One of the things that you will very frequently hear the President of the United States say is that the Islamic State, or ISIS, a group that self-consciously refers to itself as Islamic and tries to make recruits among Muslims on the basis of its Islamic authenticity, actually has nothing to do with Islam. And it's not just Obama who says this, but the Secretary of State, the Vice President, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, the Prime Minister of France, pretty much every authority in the Western world agrees that what we see in jihad terror groups has nothing actually to do with the religion of Islam. This creates a paradox since there are now 30,000 people who have gone from all over the world to join the Islamic State. And they're all Muslims. And they are going there on the basis of their acceptance of the Islamic State's appeal. Their acceptance of the claim that it is not only Islamic, but is quintessentially Islamic, and the only authentic elaboration of Islam. So, who are we to believe? Are we to believe the Western leaders and the intelligentsia that these terror groups actually have nothing to do with the actual religion? Or are we to believe the terror groups themselves who say that they have everything to do with the actual religion? In the first place, before I answer the question, we have to understand why the question is important. And it's important because it's an adage as old as warfare. If you don't understand your enemy, you cannot defeat it. And if the administration and the leaders of Western Europe are misdiagnosing this problem, if they are not rightly understanding the threat that they face, then they will not implement the proper solutions to defeat the threat. And so we have to evaluate this question. We have to understand and discover whether the Islamic State is Islamic, because there is a multitude of policy differences that will result from that. For example, right now there's a huge disagreement between Barack Obama and Vladimir Putin of Russia over how to fight the Islamic State. And the disagreement centers upon Bashar al-Assad, the dictator of Syria. Obama says we have to remove Assad, and that will topple the Islamic State. Putin says if you topple Assad, the Islamic State will be the chief beneficiary and will only grow stronger and more emboldened. Whether or not whoever is right in that, it has to be understood that Barack Obama's position comes from his core assumption that the Islamic State has nothing to do with Islam. Because if it has nothing to do with Islam, then he can discount all of its statements about its global ambitions and its claim to be the caliphate, the sole legitimate government for Muslims worldwide. He can just sweep all that aside and say what they really are is a resistance movement against Assad. And so if you take out Assad, then they'll melt away. But if they're serious, and if they really are authentically appealing to Muslims on the basis of Islamic principles, such that their global vision really does have a foundation in Islam, then Obama's wrong. And if you take out Assad, the Islamic State will not melt away, but will be emboldened. And so you see, it's an important question as to whether the Islamic State and other jihad groups are Islamic or not. And policy decisions flow from that question. The only way to answer the question is to look at Islam, and the core text of Islam is, of course, the Quran. And so I thought tonight we would have a little bit of Quran study. Like you have Bible study, tonight we'll go through the Quran. So if you would open your Qurans first off to chapter 5, verse 46, what you find is a very conciliatory passage, actually. A passage that seems to hold out the hope of some ultimate reconciliation between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And it says, we sent Jesus, we being God. In the Quran, Allah, the supreme God, speaks always of himself in the first person plural. But this is not to imply a trinity or anything of the kind. It's a royal we. Just like Queen Elizabeth says, we are not amused. So I'm not sure she ever really says that. But so Allah always speaks of himself as we. We're going to do this and that. We sent Jesus, the son of Mary, after those prophets that have been discussed in the previous passages, confirming the truth of the Torah and we gave him the gospel wherein is guidance and light. So, Jesus comes and confirms the truth of the Torah, the Old Testament law, the 5 books of Moses, and in his gospel is guidance and light. So this sounds great. This sounds as if, well, we can really have a chance for common ground. It goes on a little bit later in chapter 5, verse 65. It says, had the people of the book, which is the Quran's term for primarily Jews and Christians. There are other groups that are people of the book, but the main people of the book are Jews and Christians. And the people of the book, if they had only believed and feared Allah, then we would surely have effaced from them their evil deeds and caused them to enter the gardens of bliss. Had the people of the book observed the Torah and the gospel and all that had been revealed to them from their Lord, sustenance would have been showered over them from above and would have risen from beneath their feet. So all that the people of the book have to do, you see, is obey the scriptures, their own scriptures, the Torah and the gospel, and they'll be fine. This is what the Quran says. Now, then we start getting into some anomalies. We're told here that the people of the book have to obey the Torah and the gospel. And this is amplified in chapter 10, verses 94 and 95, where Muhammad himself, the prophet of Islam, is directed to consult the people of the book if he himself is having any doubts. He's receiving these revelations, you see, through the angel Gabriel of what is supposed to be the perfect and eternal message from Allah, given to him piece by piece. And Allah tells Muhammad in 1094, if you are in doubt concerning what we have revealed to you, then ask those who have read the book before you. It is the truth that has come to you from your Lord, so never become one of those who doubt. He's saying, ask the people of the book if you doubt what you're being told here. So Muhammad is being...
Sorry, just a quick pause here. So I'm noticing that our paid channel members have noticed that there are a number of new emojis, and I see that you are enjoying the new custom emojis. So just let me know if there are, if you have any requests for any other emojis. I made a post about it on our members only message board. So go take a look at my post and you can put your comments there down below in my members only post. And yeah, I'll see what else I can find and I'll add it to the chat. All right, back to the program.
Sent to the Jews and Christians to verify the truth of his message. This is where the troubles begin. Because the Quran also says in chapter 5, verse 17, unbelievers are those who say that Allah is the Messiah, the Son of Mary. That is, if you believe in the divinity of Christ, you're an unbeliever. Which means, essentially, that every Christian who holds to standard Christian orthodoxy is an unbeliever, according to the Quran. And this is repeated again in verse 72 of the same chapter, 572. In 573, it goes on to deny the Trinity altogether, outright, and says, those who said Allah is one of three, certainly they disbelieved. There is no God save the one Allah. And if they do not give up this claim, all who have disbelieved among them shall be subjected to painful chastisement. In 5116, Jesus appears before Allah, and Allah asks him, Jesus, son of Mary, did you say to people, take me and my mother for gods besides Allah? This is the Quran's idea of the Trinity, Allah, Jesus, and Mary. And did you tell them to do this? And Jesus says, glory to you. It was not for me to say what I had no right to say. He didn't have anything to do with it. It came from somewhere else. But where did it come from? Now we start to have a problem here, that if the Christians have to obey the gospel and they'll be on the right path, and if Muhammad himself is sent to the Christians to verify the truth of what he's hearing, then how is it that at the same time we're told that Jesus is not God the Son, that it is an offense to his transcendent majesty to have a son, that there is no Trinity, And there's even more as well as that. And that he was not crucified. In chapter 4, verse 157, it says, they did not kill or crucify him, but it appeared so to them, which in Islamic tradition in the Hadiths is amplified to mean that somebody was made to look like Jesus, and he died on the cross, but it wasn't Jesus. And of course, if Jesus did not die on the cross, then he's not the Savior, and there's no redemption. And so, how is it that these things can coexist? You see the problem. And the Christians are charged in verse 14. We took a covenant from those who said, we are Christians. But they forgot a good portion of the teaching they had been imparted. Wherefore, we aroused enmity and hatred between them until the day of resurrection. And ultimately, Allah will tell them about what they used to do. We aroused enmity and hatred among them. You see, all these different sects of Christianity testify for Muslims that the Quran is true, because the Christians are all divided and fighting among themselves. And the Quran says that Allah aroused enmity and hatred among them because they deviated from the truth. But how can it be that they deviated from the truth when the Quran also says if they follow the gospel, then they must be rightly guided, and even sends Muhammad to them? How can these things fit together? What elaborated in Islamic tradition was the idea that the Christians had actually corrupted their scriptures and dared to change the word of God, and that the Jews did this as well. That out of hatred or envy or desire for material gain or some combination of the three, or some other nefarious reason, the Christians actually dared to take the word of God and change the wording, change the actual substance of the revelations that they had received. There's a tradition in the Hadith of a delegation of Christians from Najran, which was in Yemen in southern Arabia. And it was a Christian area. And these Christians from Najran, they went up to Medina to talk to Muhammad. Along the way, the leader of the Christians is talking to his group. And he says, we know this man is the prophet. We know this man is the messenger of Allah. But when we get there, we have to argue with him and disagree with him on every point and make it very clear that we reject his prophetic claim. And they were astonished, and they said, why would we do that if he's the messenger of Allah? And he said, because the Byzantines pay us regular wages, and they would not pay us anymore if we accept this man as a prophet. And so you see, the Christians, they were just thinking about their short-term material gain. And they were willing to throw away and deny the truth on that basis. And there's no concept in the Quran or in Islamic tradition of Christians or any other unbelievers rejecting Islam in good faith. In other words, coming to the claim that Muhammad is a prophet and determining that it must not be true, and rejecting it on that basis in good conscience. They all are out for money or for fame or for some sort of filthy, dishonorable gain that they can get if they only deny Muhammad. But they did it. They pulled it off. If you can imagine the logistics of this, it explodes the whole theory, but this is standard Muslim belief, that if Muhammad is sent to the Christians in order to establish the veracity of his claims, then the original uncorrupted scripture must have existed in Muhammad's time. And Muhammad is supposed to have lived, according to Islamic tradition, between 570 and 632 AD. And so you have in the 7th century the true uncorrupted gospel. And yet, if you ask a Muslim today, say, where is the true uncorrupted gospel? Say, it's gone, it doesn't exist. The Christians destroyed them all and substituted the New Testament. Now, you can imagine, even in the 7th century, the Christianity was spread all over the world. It would have been logistically impossible to go to every church in the world and substitute the new fake corrupted gospel for the true one. It's an absurd theory, but it's the only thing that makes the Islamic claims in the Quran make sense. If the Christians are rightly guided, if they abide by the gospel, and yet the gospel teaches that Jesus is the Son of God and the Savior who was crucified and rose from the dead and conquered death by his death, and yet he wasn't really crucified at all and he's not the Son of God, and it's an insult to God to say that, well, how do you make all that hang together? the Christians have to be lying. They are renegades from the truth, and so are the Jews. And they know it. Chapter 9, verse 30 of the Quran says, the Jews say Ezra is the son of God, which no Jew has ever said, but the Quran says it, so it must be true. And the Christians say Jesus is the son of God, which we do say. Allah's curse be upon them, and how deluded they are. And so the Quran is saying that if you are an Orthodox Christian believer, you are under the curse of Allah. Now, I was asked to come here to talk about the theological foundations of jihad, and now I've been going for 15 minutes all about Islam's critique of Christianity. And you might think that I'm off topic.
So someone in the chat was asking about this documentary. So for everyone who's just joined, this is a talk by Robert Spencer from November of 2015. It's called the theological aspects of Islam that lead to jihad. And I figured, in light of all of the terrorist attacks that have happened in the last few days, and even just the FBI just a few hours ago announcing that they foiled another Islamic terrorist plot in the United States, a lot of people have questions about why there is this sudden rise in jihad and Islamic extremism. So this speech should give a pretty good explanation of that. I've played some of Robert Spencer's documentaries in my previous live streams, and I actually do have another one lined up right after this as well. So he's just explaining right now why he was providing some criticisms of Christianity. I'm assuming that's going to lead into the main topic, which is jihad. So let's just follow along and see what he has to say.
God, and it's an insult to God to say that. Well, how do you make all that hang together? The Christians have to be lying. They are renegades from the truth, and so are the Jews. And they know it. Chapter 9.
Sorry, someone said a few days, more like since the 7th century. Yeah, no, of course. I mean, jihad has been going on for the last 1400 years. I'm very, very well aware of that as an Iranian. And, the history of my peoples having been, victims of Islamic jihad as well, both in the past and also more presently. But I was referring more to just the events of this last weekend and the horrific mass shooting, the Islamic terror attack that happened at Bondi Beach.
Verse 30 of the Quran says, the Jews say Ezra is the son of God, which no Jew has ever said, but the Quran says it, so it must be true. And the Christians say Jesus is the son of God, which we do say. Allah's curse be upon them, and how deluded they are. And so the Quran is saying that if you are an Orthodox Christian believer, you are under the curse of Allah. Now, I was asked to come here to talk about the theological foundations of jihad, and now I've been going for 15 minutes all about Islam's critique of Christianity. And you might think that I'm off topic. But actually, this has everything to do with jihad. And this is because of a fundamentally different understanding of the role of the believer in the world between Christianity and Islam. And you know that the scriptures say, vengeance is mine, says the Lord. I will repay. That is a Christian concept, but it is not a concept in Islam. In Islam, vengeance belongs to the believers, and as a matter of fact, it is the responsibility of the believers. This is where this all becomes pertinent for jihad. Chapter 9, verse 74 of the Quran, it says, talking about these various unbelievers, it says, they swear by Allah that they said nothing blasphemous, whereas they indeed blasphemed, and fell into unbelief after believing, and also had evil designs which they could not carry into effect. You see, the unbelievers, they're always scheming against the Muslims, and they're always evil. They are spiteful against Muslims for no other reason than that Allah and His Messenger have enriched them through His bounty. So, if they repent, it will be to their own good.
So Batman says, I also recommend David Wood and Apostate Prophet. Yeah, absolutely. I know Apostate Prophet. We follow each other on X. We've spoken previously, and yeah, okay. I will make a note of that. David Wood also does excellent work. I was actually just looking at an episode. I don't know if it was Robert Spencer was hosting it or if it was David Wood, but they were speaking together about jihad, and so I will make a note of that here to include Apostate Prophet and David Wood to the list of um, people who speak about jihad that we should watch. Thank you for the suggestions, and thank you for supporting my channel. Really appreciate that. I'm glad you're enjoying the live stream.
But if they turn away, Allah will sternly punish them both in this world and in the next. Both in this world and in the next. If you are a renegade, an unbeliever, a believer in the twisted and hijacked version of Christianity that the church teaches, as opposed to the true teachings of Jesus, which were Islam, then you will be punished in this world as well as in the next. In other words, if you are an Orthodox Christian, if you are a Christian who believes in the divinity of Christ, and in the crucifixion, and the resurrection, and the divine sonship, and the divinity of Christ, and all these things, then you have to be punished in this world as well as in the next. Now, who's going to do that? Allah is going to punish you in this world and in the next. How is Allah going to punish you in this world as well as in the next? He is going to punish you by the hands of the believers. That's their job, to make you suffer. Chapter 9, verse 14 of the Quran says, make war on them. Allah will punish them by your hands and will humiliate them. Allah will punish them by your hands and humiliate them. He will grant you victory over them and will soothe the bosoms of those who believe and remove rage from their hearts. So if you are an angry, depressed Muslim, then Allah will soothe your heart if you fight against unbelievers. And He will punish them by your hand.
It's also why all these Islamic terrorists and jihadis yell Allahu Akbar while they are murdering infidels, because they've literally been told and they believe that murdering the infidels is their Allah-given responsibility, because that's what it says in the Quran.
The Quran also contains, and this is the most perhaps momentous passage of all the ones that I've quoted so far, fight against those who do not believe in Allah and the last day, do not obey Allah and the last day, and do not forbid what He has forbidden, even if they are of the people of the book. Remember, that's the Jews and the Christians primarily, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. Jizya is a tax. That's what the word means, tax. And it is a tax that the Muslims don't have to pay, but non-Muslims under the rule of Islamic law have to pay. And so if you pay, the Muslims are told in this verse, that's chapter 9, verse 29, you fight against those who do not obey Allah and His Messenger, and do not forbid what He has forbidden, even if they are of the people of the book. And the reason for the fighting is so that you get them to pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. Now, this has been the font, the source of an elaborate system of laws that are part of Sharia, Islamic law, which mandates the second-class status of Christians as well as Jews and others under Islamic law, in which they are denied basic rights. They have to pay this tax that the Muslims don't have to pay. They cannot build new churches or repair old ones, so their communities are perpetually in a state of decline. They cannot hold authority over Muslims. So you can't be the boss, even in your little shop. You can't hold any authority over a Muslim. You're relegated to the most menial jobs in society where you're not anybody's boss. Muslim men can marry non-Muslim women, but Muslim women are forbidden to marry non-Muslim men. and you understand in a society in which it's understood that a wife will become part of the husband's household, that too is a supremacist law that ensures that the Christian community will always be in decline at the expense of the Christian community will always be diminished, and the Muslim community will always be increasing. And all this is because the Christians have dared to tamper with the words of their scriptures and twisted and hijacked the message of the Muslim prophet Jesus to create Christianity, a false and renegade, hollow religion that has no force or power. But because the Muslims are the executors of God's wrath in this world, they have the responsibility, not just they're exhorted to or encouraged to, but they have the responsibility before Allah to be the executors of His wrath and to punish the Christians. So,
guys, I just wanted to ask you all a big favor. If you're liking and enjoying the live stream, please don't forget to like the live stream. There's about 750 of you in here right now on YouTube, but only 177 likes. So the likes go a long way to helping. And of course, if you're enjoying the live stream, don't forget to subscribe to my channel as well. All right, thank you, everyone. And I appreciate all the support. And I am reading your comments as I'm watching and listening to the documentary. Usually I have more to say, but Robert Spencer, I mean, he's so good that this is a learning. I mean, not really learning. It's more just like refreshing my memory experience for me. But I think for many of you, this might be new. And so pay attention, because what he's talking about is directly linked to all of this Islamic terrorism and jihad that we are seeing in Western society. And if you've ever wondered why Islamic terrorists yell Allahu Akbar when they're murdering infidels, this is why.
To allow Allah to punish the Christians through them. This is the foundation of modern-day jihad. It is ultimately and fundamentally a theological war. Now, this issue is extraordinarily clouded over, fogged over, and complicated for numerous reasons. But one of the main ones is that whenever Muslim authorities today, and even terrorist leaders, are asked why they are fighting, they always list a long list of grievances. And this has the power of clouding Western leaders' minds. And it makes them think, oh, if we just redress these grievances, everything will be okay. So, for example, Osama bin Laden wrote about 9/11 and why the Muslims took down the Twin Towers and attacked the Pentagon on 9/11. And he said, well, it's because you had troops in Saudi Arabia, the sacred site of the two holy places of Mecca and Medina. And you support Israel, and you've done all these other atrocities. And so all these people think, Western leaders think, that if we throw Israel under the bus, if we get out of their lands...
Sorry, I'm not laughing at what Robert Spencer is saying. I'm just, this comment made me laugh. Rambam 3000, I say we bring back Cyrus the Great to sort things out. So interestingly enough, so first of all, for those of you who might not know Cyrus the Great, he is the founder of the Persian Empire, probably the most famous Iranian in the history of our civilization. Of course, we Iranians love him so much. He is the founder. But it's interesting is that, we kind of do have a modern day Cyrus. His Royal Highness Reza Shah II, the Shah of Iran. He's currently in exile. Many Iranians view him as sort of the modern day Cyrus the Great, and we all support him very much because we know that he is the only one who can free our country from the terrorist Islamic dictatorship that has been occupying Iran for the last 47 years. And he's the only one that we trust to lead the transition from a brutal Islamic dictatorship to a modern functioning democracy. And Iranians will determine at the back. So once Iran is free, Iranians themselves will determine at the ballot box what type of democratic system they want to have, whether they want to have a constitutional monarchy like what Iran was prior to 1979, or whether they want to have a republic. Now, I can tell you that the vast majority of Iranians, we want, including myself, we want to go back to a constitutional monarchy. There is no Iran without kings, kingdoms. The whole concept of a monarch is part and parcel of Iranian identity and Iranian history. The word Shah, which means king, it's found in so many different words, different places, and of course the Shahnameh as well. Like our greatest literary work, written by poet Ferdowsi. It's called the Shahnameh, which means the Book of Kings. So yeah, but so that's why I was smiling a little bit at your comment. We do have a modern Cyrus the Great, and he has a lot of support, and I'm very, very hopeful about the future of Iran. So thank you very much for the comment, and thank you for the support.
And so on, that the jihad will go away. But they have failed to take into account the fundamental theological reasoning behind this. And a further complication comes from the fact that in Islamic theology, only the caliph, the successor of Muhammad as the leader of all the Muslims, is authorized to wage what is known as offensive jihad. And he actually has the responsibility to declare jihad against non-Muslim states on regular occasions. But unless you believe the Islamic State's claims, ISIS's claims, there's been no caliph since 1924, when the secular Turkish government abolished the caliphate. So what you have in the world now is all defensive jihad, because nobody needs to declare defensive jihad. All you have to do is see that a Muslim land is attacked, and then you have the responsibility to fight. But that means that all the jihads in the world today have to be justified as defensive, hence the list of grievances. But what if all those grievances were swept away? What if Israel were to disappear and the United States were to withdraw entirely from the Islamic world? Would the jihad go away? It would not. And it would not because of, if you think about that verse again, chapter 9, verse 29, fight against those who do not obey Allah and His Messenger, and do not forbid what He has forbidden, even if they are of the people of the book, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. Now think about that for a second. It doesn't say, even if they're of the people of the book whose foreign policy you deplore, or even if they are of the people of the book who have offended you by founding a new nation on land that you believe to be yours, or even if they are of the people of the book whose immorality disgusts you and makes you believe that they are the spawn of Satan themselves. It's just, even if they're of the people of the book, full stop. Even if the Christians and the Jews are polite, virtuous, just, magnanimous, and kind to the Muslims, they still have this imperative to fight against them and subjugate them. And this has been so throughout the history of Islam. In the beginning of the religion of Islam, which is attributed to, of course, Muhammad and the revelations he supposedly received between the year 610 and 632. Right after he died, you have this extraordinary explosion of conquest, and the immediate and rapid conquest and subjugation of what had been, up to that point, over half of the Christian world, stretching from all across North Africa, the land of Augustine of Hippo, and so many others in North Africa, Cyprian of Carthage, and so on, all through the Middle East and into Persia, and even into India. Now, according to the standard Islamic tradition, canonical Islamic tradition, in the Hadith and thereafter, this is all because of the imperatives to fight within the Quran and within the Hadith, the traditions of Muhammad. Some of the Hadith there, Muhammad says, I have been commanded to fight against people until they confess that there is no God but Allah, and I am His messenger. And if they do, their lives and property are safe from me. Now there's an awful lot in that. Think about that for a minute. I've been commanded to fight against people until they confess that there's no God but Allah, and I am His messenger. And if they do, when they do, their lives and property are safe from me. So He's commanded to fight against people. You see there again, there's no qualification. There's no distinction. There is no exception. Fight against all people until they become Muslim. As the Quran says in chapter 8, verse 39, fight until religion is all for Allah. And if they do, their lives and property are safe from me, which in other words, if they don't become Muslim or submit, then their lives and property are not safe from Him. He can seize them at will. He also says in another hadith that when you meet the unbelievers, first you invite them to accept Islam. And Osama bin Laden has done that, and other Muslim leaders have addressed the American people and invited us to accept Islam. Because you've got to do that first. Second, if they refuse to accept Islam, you invite them to pay the jizya, which means you invite them to pay this tax and accept all this submission that is mandated in the Quran and Islamic law for the Christians. If they refuse both, then seek Allah's help and fight them. All of this territory conquered, and the Christians and the Jews immediately subjugated under these laws. And their treatment was consistent throughout Islamic history, as per the direction of the Quran, to make them feel themselves subdued. This was the execution of the wrath of Allah upon them.
Hus 390, thank you for the like. I appreciate that, and I hope you're enjoying the live stream and learning something here. Welcome.
So that every day, in the deprivations and the suffering of their daily lives, they would feel that they had rejected the truth, that they had rejected the Quran, rejected Islam. All you had to do to have equal rights in Egypt or Syria or Iraq was to convert to Islam. Although in some cases, because the taxes paid, the jizya paid by the Christians and the Jews was so great that it was the foundation of the economy, conversion was actually forbidden by several of the caliphs because it would destroy the tax base. The Caliph Umar, the second successor of Muhammad, says in a hadith, be sure always to collect the jizya because it's the source of the livelihood for yourself and your descendants. In Islam, there's no idea that work is a noble thing blessed by God. There is no idea of that. It doesn't mean nobody works. You got to work to live. But the ideal state is one in which the Muslims don't work, and the non-Muslims pay the jizya. And that supports the Islamic State. But what do you do when you've been collecting the jizya from people who you've denied all these rights to? So they can't hold good jobs anyway, and they can't make a whole lot of money. What do you do when you've bled them dry? You got to conquer somewhere else. And that's the jihad imperative. And then you conquer some more people who you can then impoverish again. And this is actually the record of Islamic history. If you look at the history of the caliphates, and I hope to be able to write about this in a book someday, every time that there is a golden age, and you may have heard about these in history, especially if you went to a secular school at any point, a golden age of Islam, and where there was a great powerful empire, and it was a great military force and a great cultural force. They all had in common that they had wealthy subject communities of Jews and Christians. But as those wealthy subject communities became impoverished, as they inevitably would over the centuries with the combination of the discrimination that is mandated in the dhimmi status, the status of the protected people, the subjugated people, then the empires go into decline. And you may have heard the term for the last caliphate, the Ottoman Empire, the sick man of Europe. And the Ottoman Empire was the sick man of Europe when its Jews and Christians were too poor to sustain the wealth that it had previously enjoyed and the power that it had previously exercised. But then the idea would be to wage jihad again. And actually during World War I, one of the last caliphs declared the war itself to be a jihad and called upon all the Muslims to fight against the French and the British as a jihad. But at that point, his authority had become so weakened in practice that it was little heeded, and the empire fell not long after. But that set the stage for what we see happening now in the Middle East. I said before, the caliphate is the sole government that is legitimate for Muslims worldwide. This is Sunni Muslim theology, and Sunnis are 85 to 90% of Muslims worldwide. In Sunni theology, Khalifa is successor, and the Caliph is the successor of Muhammad as the military, political, and spiritual leader of the Muslims. There was always a Caliph from the 7th century, from the death of Muhammad, up through various dynasties that were caliphates, the Umayyads, the Abbasids, and finally the Ottomans, until the caliphate was abolished in 1924. I also mentioned before that only the caliph is authorized to wage offensive jihad. And so the caliphate, as the sole legitimate government for Muslims, the symbol and the source of their unity that transcends all nationality and all ethnicity and any other allegiance, is gone. It's as if somebody had gone to Rome and deposed the Pope and said there'll be no more papacy. And this was catastrophic in the Islamic world. You can imagine how traumatic it would be were that to happen in the Catholic Church. And this is what happened in Islam in 1924. Immediately there were groups formed. In 1928, there was a group founded in Egypt called the Muslim Brotherhood that you may have heard of. It's still very much around. And the Muslim...
For those of you who've seen my other live streams, Bridget Gabriel talks about the Muslim Brotherhood. I'm also looking to find a good documentary to talk about and explain the Muslim Brotherhood in detail. Although, Bridget Gabriel does have those short video clips where she has spoken about the Muslim Brotherhood. And for our American friends who follow along with politics and the news, which I'm assuming you do because you're, here on this live stream. If the Muslim Brotherhood sounds familiar, that's because just recently, last week, the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, were designated as foreign terrorist organizations in Florida. And last month, they were designated as foreign terrorist organizations in Texas. And my understanding is that now the United States is looking to completely ban the Muslim Brotherhood and possibly CARE and list them as terrorist organizations. And just as an FYI, countries like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the UAE, Bahrain, and Jordan have all listed the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. So that's what Robert Spencer is referring to here back in 2015 when he's talking about the Muslim Brotherhood.
Brotherhood was founded in order to restore the caliphate because it was not considered legitimate for...
Yeah, let me go back a little bit because I cut into what he was saying, but did you catch that? So he's basically saying that the Muslim Brotherhood was founded in 1928, pretty much like just, a few years after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, because the Ottoman Empire was considered to be an Islamic caliphate. Once the Ottoman Empire fell, the Muslim Brotherhood was then created in 1928 in order to work towards rebuilding and recreating another Islamic caliphate that would replace the fallen Ottoman
for Muslims,
Empire.
The symbol and the source of their unity that transcends all nationality and all ethnicity and any other allegiance is gone. It's as if somebody had gone to Rome and deposed the Pope and said there'll be no more papacy. And this was catastrophic in the Islamic world. You can imagine how traumatic it would be were that to happen in the Catholic Church. And this is what happened in Islam in 1924. Immediately there were groups formed. In 1928, there was a group founded in Egypt called the Muslim Brotherhood that you may have heard of. It's still very much around. And the Muslim Brotherhood was founded in order to restore the caliphate because it was not considered legitimate for there to be Islam without its political extension, without its political application, and its supremacist character as inherent in that political application. So the Muslim Brotherhood, from the Muslim Brotherhood came Hamas, Al-Qaeda, and other jihad groups, and all of them had this aspiration to restore the caliphate. None of them were able to do it. The brothers, the Muslim Brotherhood, came closest in 2012 when they took power in Egypt. And you may recall Mohammed Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood regime in Egypt. But they only lasted a year because they so alienated their people that there were literally millions of people out on the streets protesting against them, and they were toppled. So the Muslim Brotherhood lost its chance. And then this renegade group of Al-Qaeda in Iraq that had split from Al-Qaeda declared its own caliphate, and this is the Islamic State, or ISIS. Now, this is coming back around to the beginning. ISIS gains its authenticity and buttresses its claim to be the caliphate by appealing to Islamic scripture and grounding everything it does in Islamic scripture. Now, you may recall, or you may know, how brutal ISIS has been to the Christians. The Archbishop of Mosul in Iraq, very large city in Iraq that had a Christian presence since the time of the Lord, he said, my entire diocese has been lost to Islam. And the same thing is going to happen in Europe and America unless people wake up to this threat. And he was right about that. But why did he lose his entire diocese to Islam? How is it that Christians who'd lived there under Muslim rule for centuries, why were they suddenly driven out? Why were they suddenly being massacred? It all goes back to Islamic theology yet again. At the decline, when the Ottoman Empire was indeed the sick man of Europe, the Western powers at that time had some cultural confidence. They had some confidence in themselves as Christian powers. And they were very concerned, like they are not today, about the Christian persecution, the Muslims persecuting Christians. And they were very concerned about the Greek and Armenian Christians under Ottoman rule, who were living in squalor and absolute poverty and suffering from all the laws that mandated their second-class status that I mentioned earlier. And so in the middle of the 19th century, the Turks were having conflicts with Russia, and they wanted the French and the British to help them against Russia. And the French and the British agreed to help them, and they did, in the Crimean War. But they did it for a price, and that price was the emancipation of the Christians and the abolition of the dhimma. What I'm talking about when I say the dhimma is the contract of protection, it's called. You remember how you may have read about the mafia, or you saw The Godfather or something, and how, you pay protection. You've got a very nice store here, and it'd be terrible if somebody threw a rock through your window. So, you give a couple $100 every couple weeks, and we'll make sure your window's okay. Protection. And so, it's the same thing in Islam. The Christians and the Jews pay the jizya for the protection. Their lives and property are not forfeit then. But anyway, all this is abolished in the reforms in the Ottoman Empire under Western pressure, 1856. After that, you have the fall of the empire. You have a period of colonization in which the French and the British occupy a great deal of former Ottoman holdings, including Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and so on, Egypt. And then you have a succession of relatively secular rulers who did not rule according to Islamic law. The Nasser in Egypt, followed by Sadat, followed by Mubarak. Saddam Hussein in Iraq, the Assads in Syria, secular rulers who, for a variety of reasons, they were Arab nationalist rulers, and the Arab nationalist movement was a secular movement that was actually founded by Christians, Arabic-speaking Christians, who wanted to get out from under the depredations in Islamic law. And so they appealed to the Muslims on the basis of a shared Arabic ethnicity. And this was a real viable political movement in the Middle East for decades until the toppling of the Christians were president of Iraq, and Christians did not enjoy full equal rights, but many more rights than war in Iraq and so on. The Americans leave. The Sunnis coalesce into a fighting force that opposes Assad, who's propped up by Shiite Iran. And the Sunnis and the Shiites, as you may expect, hate each other. And against the regime in Baghdad that we left behind that was also Shiite. And
that's just the one thing that I sort of disagree with Robert Spencer on when he talks about how the Sunnis and the Shia, hate each other. I mean, ultimately, when it comes to jihad and the infidels, Sunnis and Shias will always unite, right? I mean, the Islamic Republic occupying Iran is Shia, but they are fully supportive of and they fund Hamas, which is Sunni, and Hamas is the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. So, I mean, talking about how these groups hate each other, I mean, yeah, of course, like when they're not fighting infidels, they're fighting amongst themselves. Like that's just what, they've been doing for the last 1400 years. But when it comes to analyzing jihad, there really is no difference, right? Like it's, potato versus potato, basically, because when it comes to jihad, when it comes to, Israel, when it comes to fighting the West, all of these Islamic terrorist groups will unite regardless of which denomination of Islam they are from, because they're all united in their hatred of the non-Muslims and infidels. So, I mean, talking about this distinction between Sunni and Shia and how they hate each other within the context of Islamic Jihad, it doesn't really make much sense. Like it's a difference. It's a distinction without a difference, let's say.
The Islamic State. The Islamic State goes and conquers these areas and goes to the Christians and says, we're enforcing Islamic law now. And you have to pay us the jizya. And you may have seen that they marked the Christian homes in Mosul with the nun, the Arabic letter N for Nasara, which is Nazarenes, the Quranic term for Christians. So they knew who they had to collect the tax from. The Christians said, what are you talking about? We've lived here for centuries, and I've heard about, they no doubt had heard about the jizya, but they hadn't paid it, their parents hadn't paid it, their grandparents hadn't paid it. We're talking about the mid-19th century. I've talked to some older people from Christian Arabs, and they say, yes, I remember my grandfather telling me he had to get off the street when the Muslims were coming and so on and that kind of thing. But it was that kind of a distant memory. And now the Islamic State's coming back and reasserting it on the basis of the Quran, on the basis of Islamic theology. And so the Christians said, what are you talking about? We're not going to pay that. And so they were killed because they were kuffar harbi then. They were infidels at war with Islam. Kuffar harbi is infidels at war. And they are infidels at war with Islam because they're rejecting the rightful rule of the Muslims. They're rejecting what the Quran directs for the Christians. So they were massacred or they were able to flee. Those that do remain, very few, but they do remain in Syria and Iraq under the Islamic State's domains, they do pay the jizya. And there have been photographs recently coming out from the Islamic State of their collecting it as a sign of their abasement and humiliation and acceptance of the Islamic rule. And so all of this becomes coherent when one understands Islamic theology. And if one does not understand Islamic theology or rejects it as a defining factor in this, like Obama does, and the entire State Department establishment, then they're not going to understand what they're seeing at all. And they're going to continue to make give the wrong prescriptions emanating from their wrong diagnosis. And so this is the problem that we face. The Quranic imperative is to fight until religion is all for Allah. The Quranic imperative is to subjugate the Jews and the Christians and other people of the book under the hegemony of the Muslims and make sure that they feel every day the wrath of Allah, as is the Muslims' responsibility to execute on this earth. And these are fundamentally theological concepts. So when our administration says this Islamic State has nothing to do with Islam, they are cutting themselves off from the only thing that makes coherent what they are doing. And I will close with just a few examples of that. You remember the beheadings and the videos of the beheadings that the Islamic State put out. And it was repulsive before the whole world, and the world was shocked and revulsed by these videos. And you got to think, you know, these people are very bad at public relations because they're making everybody hate them. And even Al-Qaeda said, you really should cut out the beheading videos. You're making everybody hate you. Why are they doing it? The Quran says, chapter 47, verse 4, when you meet the unbelievers, strike the necks. And so you think about that. If your Holy Scripture, the perfect Word of God, says when you meet the unbelievers, strike the necks, how could it be bad to strike the necks when you meet the unbelievers? How could it be imprudent to do it if this is the will of God? And so they do it.
Thank you, Learning Language, for gifting memberships to 5 lucky people in the channel. Really appreciate that. Thank you for the support. And to all the new members, welcome to Goldie's Gang. I hope you enjoy the benefits of membership for a month. And yeah, I hope you're enjoying my channel as well. Thank you so much, Learning Language, for the support. Really appreciate that. Gandalf, I feel, you know what, Gandalf, I feel so bad because Gandalf, I think you're in Iran. And so you can't, I don't think you're able to like pay for your own membership or anything like that. And supporter. I am going to, you know what, Gandalf, what I'll do is I will make a separate live stream at some point, and then I will invite you to that live stream, and you'll be the only person in that live stream, and then I will gift you a membership. That way, even though you're in Iran, you can have access to all of the member perks. So yeah, I will figure out how I can get in touch with you, Gandalf. Gandalf, I don't know if you use X, but if you're on X, send me a message to my DMs. My DMs are open. So yeah, send me a message on X and we will coordinate, and then we will get you that. Well, Amir, so the membership could be random, but if Gandalf is the only person in the live stream, then I'm hoping that, you know, he will get the membership there, because he is in Iran, and so it's really difficult for people in Iran to pay for things right now, and I would never expect for him to pay, especially given the economic situation there. But thank you, Learning Language, for the support, and welcome to the new members. I hope you enjoy my channel.
And the Quran also says in chapter 4, verse 3, it says that you can marry the women that seem good to you, 2 or 3 or 4. And if you fear that you will not be able to treat them justly, then marry only one. Problem with that is just is in the eye of the beholder. But in any case, or take from among those your right hands possess. Who are those your right hands possess? In chapter 4, verse 24, it says, forbidden to you are all married women. That is, you can't have sexual relations with married women, except those your right hands possess. Okay, so who are those that your right hands possess? Chapter 23, verse 1 to 6 says that the righteous Muslims, let me get to it, the believers have indeed attained true success. Those who in their prayers humble themselves, who avoid whatever is vain and frivolous, who observe zakah, that is almsgiving, who strictly guard their private parts, except from their wives and those whom their right hands possess. So these are obviously, whoever they are available sexually, and this is very unpleasant, I know, but it's important to understand here again what's going on. Finally, chapter 33, verse 50, O prophet.
Yeah, he's basically talking about concubines and sex slaves. And this is so these passages that he's talking about in the Quran in terms of like, what your right hand possesses, that's basically what gave the so-called justification for Islamic terrorists to kidnap all of those Yazidi women and girls. I think of those like 7,000 of them that they kidnapped, and they sold them all into slavery. And many of them have been rescued, but many of them are still, unfortunately, sex slaves. And this is permissible in the Quran, and no one really talks about the Arab slave trade. I've done live streams about it in the past. I'll see if I can do another one, an upcoming one. But the Arab slave trade included a lot of European women, in fact, that were basically concubines. And yeah, it was incredibly prominent. Yeah.
We have made lawful for you your wives, whose bridal dues you have paid, and the slave girls you possess from among the spoils of war. So this makes it very clear that these are women who've been captured in war, and they are non-Muslim women, and is very well delineated in Islamic theology that a man can have as many as 4 wives, and also these sex slaves that are non-Muslim women that have been captured in war. This is exactly what the Islamic State did. And note also that the Islamic State didn't make this up.
So when he's talking about the Islamic State, that's ISIS, and he's referring to, for example, the Yazidi genocide, which happened, I believe it was in 2014, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, this talk is happening in 2015, so about 10 years ago.
The Islamic State did not originate this. The Nigerian group Boko Haram, well before the Islamic State did it, also captured a number of non-Muslim women and was doing exactly the same thing. And remember, Michelle Obama had the hashtag Bring Back Our Girls? That was about Boko Haram in Nigeria. Same thing, because they're both working from the same Islamic principles that are in the Quran. What is repulsive to us and what is morally repugnant to us is a marketing tool for them. Young Muslims see this. They read the Quran.
Someone in the chat was asking, what speech is this? So that's the title of my live stream. It's a speech by Robert Spencer, and it's called The Theological Aspects of Islam That Lead to Jihad. That's the name of the speech here.
They know what's in it. And so they see the Islamic State doing this, the beheadings, the sex slavery, the rest of it, and they think, at last, authentic Islam. We now see somebody actually doing what the Quran says, instead of bowing to the opinion of the infidel Westerners and saying, no, 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 we must not do that. And so they've made recruits. 30,000, as I said. 30,000 Muslims from around the world have gone to Iraq and Syria to join the Islamic State because they read the same Quran. And they understand that this is the group that is a faithful embodiment of what is taught in it. If we do not understand these things, we're going to keep making mistakes. For example, the Quran says, let not believers take unbelievers as your friends and protectors in preference to believers. Whoever does that has nothing to do with Allah, unless you're doing it to guard yourselves against them. Now, there's several things about that verse. That's chapter 3, verse 28. It says, let not the believers take unbelievers as their friends and protectors in preference to believers. The word in Arabic is awliya, for friends and protectors. The word wali comes from that. That has some people might know that word. It's sort of a liege lord, somebody who takes care of you, somebody who is the person to whom you owe allegiance, and he gives you protection. You don't take the unbelievers for that, unless you're doing it to guard yourselves against them. Now, in closing, I brought a Quran that has commentary by Sayyid Abu Ala Maududi, who was a Pakistani Islamic scholar and politician. He died in 1979, and he's not an extremist. He's mainstream influential around the world. I guarantee you that if you have an Islamic bookstore in this area, or I'm sure there's one in Pittsburgh, you can go in there and you will find the writings of Maududi. He is absolutely mainstream, and there is no Islamic bookstore in this country, I'm confident in saying, that would refuse to carry his material. And I have this one because it has his commentary. And so you don't have to take my word for it. On that, let not believers take unbelievers as their friends and protectors. On that verse, this is how he explains it. This means that it is lawful for a believer, helpless in the grip of the enemies of Islam and in imminent danger of severe wrong and persecution, to keep his faith concealed and to behave in such manner as to create the impression that he is on the same side as his enemies. To create the impression that he is on the same side as his enemies. Right after 9/11, George W. Bush met with Musharraf, Parvez Musharraf, the president of Pakistan. And he agreed to give Pakistan $1.3 billion every year to fight al-Qaeda and the Taliban. In 2008, it came to light that a significant amount of that money had been funneled by the Pakistani government to al-Qaeda and the Taliban. Do you think they were trying to create the impression they were on the same side as their enemies? And do you think we fell for it hook, line, and sinker? Do you think George W. Bush ever read that passage of the Quran or the commentary attending thereto? He did not. Do you think Barack Obama has? He did not. In closing, I'll give you one more. We're all the three great Abrahamic faiths, right? And the Second Vatican Council and the Catechism of the Catholic Church, they say the Muslims profess to hold the faith of Abraham. Words very carefully chosen, that profess is key. In other words, they say they hold the faith of Abraham, but it leaves open the question as to whether they really do. Do they? Let me step back from that and ask you, who's Abraham? Father of many nations, right? Into Genesis. And so George W. Bush and Barack Obama after him have both sent greetings to the Muslim world on the feast of Eid al-Adha, which we just had not long ago. It's the feast commemorating Abraham's sacrifice near.
You know what's interesting is you would think that the Americans would learn from the Pakistani example where they gave them, US taxpayer dollars to fight Islamic terrorism. And then they found out that the money was being funneled to the very same Islamic terrorists that they were, supposedly fighting with US dollars. And, you would think people would learn from that lesson. And yet, look what's happening in this day and age with Qatar, right? It's just when you dig into it, it's like, when will people learn, right? When will people learn? And especially now that we just received breaking news that the FBI foiled an Islamic terrorist attack that was being organized by the pro-Palestine groups in the United States. And they were planning on doing an Islamic terrorist attack on New Year's Eve. So, guys, you have to take this stuff very, very seriously.
Sacrifice of his son Ishmael. And then he's stopped by Allah. You may recall something like that in the Old Testament, but of course it's Isaac. In any case, both of the presidents greeted the Muslims on Eid al-Adha and said, in Abraham we have a common father, and if we follow out the principles that are inherent in that, then we will find harmony and common ground. It sounds great, right? The problem is the Muslims don't read Genesis. They don't read that Abraham's the father of many nations. They don't have any idea about that. They read the Quran. The Quran has Abraham. Abraham's in chapter 60, verse 4. Chapter 60, verse 4 says, Abraham is an excellent example. Very important words. Uswa hasana, excellent example. That means you imitate Abraham. Muhammad is called the excellent example in chapter 33, verse 21 of the Quran. That means everything Muhammad does is good and right, and you should imitate it. So here we have the same thing being said about Abraham, except here it's qualified. You have an excellent example in Abraham and his companions. When they said to their people, so this is where you should imitate Abraham, you understand, when he said this, we totally dissociate ourselves from you and from the gods you worship instead of Allah. We renounce you And there's enmity and hatred between us and you until you believe in Allah, the one true God. That's where you should imitate Abraham, in hating everybody who doesn't believe in Allah. Enmity and hatred between us and you until you believe in Allah, the one true God. But you may not emulate Abraham, the verse goes on to say, when he says to his father, certainly I will ask forgiveness for you. So in other words, you got to imitate Abraham when he says there's hatred between the unbelievers and us forever until you become Muslim. But you may not imitate Abraham when he says, I will pray for forgiveness for the unbelievers. And so when the Muslim world receives the greetings of Bush and Obama on Eid al-Adha, and they say we should be like Abraham, they think, oh, that means I should hate you. And this is the kind of blunder that comes from ignorance of the Islamic theology. And so, in closing, I can say we are in a very serious battle. This is a battle of life and death. The Islamic State routinely says, we will win because we love death more than you love life. And I know that's the seal of their destruction. It's going to come at a great price, and we have a great cross to bear, I'm sure, that's coming. But we know the author of life is going to conquer. And so we know that insofar as we are on his side, then he will always trample upon death. And so we know that the final victory is assured. But I hope that we will have the strength spiritually to understand this as a spiritual battle and to confront it as such, realizing in confidence that the final victory is ours, but understanding that it will come through the cross. Thank you very much.
Okay, so that was, let me just pull it up for you here. So for those of you who are interested in learning more about this speech and possibly rewatching it, this was Robert Spencer, and his speech is called "The Theological Aspects of Islam That Lead to Jihad." This was his talk from 10 years ago, November 23, 2015, and it has 380,000 views. I mean, I don't think that's enough. I think, this should be mandatory watching for everyone in Western countries, but there you go. So if you're interested in watching that yourselves or sharing it, there you go. There's one final video that I want to play with Robert Spencer. And this is also very, very relevant. Now, this video was aired 3 months ago, and it only has 8,000 views, unfortunately. So it's called "Jihad in the West. Robert Spencer warns of Islamization, propaganda, and rising threats." So we are going to watch this one as well. This, of course, is a bit more recent. It's only from 3 months ago. And as you can tell, many people, myself, Robert Spencer, and so many others, we have been warning about Islamic terrorism and jihad for quite a long time. And yet, for some reason, people either ignore us or we're accused of, Islamophobia, or we're considered extreme, or whatever other garbage nonsense they want to throw out. But one thing that I'm noticing is that more and more people are waking up and realizing that maybe they have been gaslit by the media. Maybe all this talk about DEI and multiculturalism and diversity and, white supremacy, maybe that's not entirely accurate. And maybe there is something to what people are saying about the dangers of jihad and Islamic terrorism. And, I'm actually noticing that quite a bit on my own channel. And I do want, before I play this video, let me just put it up here. Before I play this video by Robert Spencer, I really do want to thank all of you for joining my live streams, whether you're on X or on YouTube. But especially on YouTube, you guys are really, really helping me to grow my channel. Less than 3 months ago, when I started doing my daily live streams on October 1, I was at maybe around 1,500, 1,600 followers. And right now, thanks to all of you and all of your support, I'm almost at 42,000. So I've gained like 40,000 followers on YouTube in 2.5 months. And you guys are helping me get my videos out there. You're helping me get my live streams out there. And one thing that I've started doing more recently is I'm doing short form content videos, and those seem to be a very, very big hit. So I wasn't really doing short form content videos before. I was doing mostly, I was focusing more on the live streams. But here, let me show you guys. So like these numbers are just insane to me. So I just started something called Goldie Unfiltered, and some of these videos are getting thousands of views. Like this Sharia 101, I already have 108,000 views. Anti-Islam protests by Iranians in mosques, 107,000. My video that I posted last night, 42,000 views. Like again, for a small account like mine, because okay, now I'm at 41.8. So my account, subscriptions are going up, memberships are going up as well. And I just want to thank all of you guys. Like you guys are encouraging me and giving me the motivation to continue doing what I'm doing. And I'm starting to realize that I was really missing out by not posting these short form videos, because I was, focusing more on my lives. And so, if you go to like my live list here, like there's like literally at least 50 live streams here, right? Like 50 live streams. And then, oh, what's going on? Let me make this big here. 50 live streams here. And then, I have I've got like my documentary series here as well, like where we rate documentaries from Iran. But one thing I'm noticing is these short form videos where I kind of take, a few of the concepts and I just kind of shorten it down and I provide it in bite-sized pieces. Oh, thank you so much, Lionel. Thank you for being here. Have a good day. Yeah, I find that when I do the short form, I guess it catches people's eye more, right? Because if I'm talking about a topic on a live stream and I'm doing it for 2.5 hours, and I guess not a lot of people tune into that, but these short form videos, the algorithm is just really, really kicking off here. So yeah, so thank you so much for that, guys. I really do appreciate it. And you guys are encouraging me, because I've been warning about this stuff for quite a long time. And I was accused by the National Council of Canadian Muslims for Islamophobia, for speaking about this, and for the crime of talking to Tommy Robinson about the Islamic Republic occupying Iran. And you would think Canada would have freedom of speech, but no, apparently we have blasphemy laws, and the National Council of Canadian Muslims apparently can dictate who you can and can't speak with. So anyways, but thankfully, I'm not a politician anymore. So I'm free to speak and I'm free to say whatever I want to say, which is actually really refreshing. And the fact that you guys are so supportive and you're helping me grow my channel, and you're watching my videos, sharing my videos, and also for those of you who are becoming paid members and supporting my channel financially through monthly paid memberships. I know it's only $10 a month, but I mean that really does make a difference, and it does add up. And so I really do appreciate that as well. And I will be working more on member perks. So for all of our new members, I do members only live streams after my daily show. Today, I won't be doing one only because I do have to be somewhere I do have plans at 5 o'clock. And so I have to prepare and leave. And I can't do a members only live stream because I still do have to fit in my daily video. So yeah, I mean, I think I'll leave it there for now. I did say that I was going to play a second video by Robert Spencer, but I wasn't looking at the time. It's 2:15. I still have to do my daily short video. That takes me a little bit, and then I have to get ready and go. But thank you everyone for joining me. Thank you for your support. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for all of the comments. I will definitely do a members only after show tomorrow, 100%. Tomorrow, I don't have plans in the evening. So, and then whether or not I'm going to be doing a live stream this evening, that really depends on what time I'm done my evening plans. So, if I am done and I'm home, around, let's say, if I'm home by 9 or 9:30 p.m., then I might do a live stream. I'll do like a late show type of thing. But if not, then I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you everyone for joining. I hope you appreciated today's live stream. And once again, my condolences to everyone who has been impacted by this horrific terrorist attack at Bondi Beach. My thoughts and prayers are with you. And yeah, as always, Payande Iran, Javid Shah.